Hi, my name is Gary Giroux, and I'm president of Modern Ice Equipment and Supply. It is with great excitement that we're here at Modern Ice University to bring an educational session to our packaged ice industry clients. MIU is our branded learning and webinar and teaching platform that has had thousands of participants in either in-person or virtual training over the years. We've trained them on merchandiser products, ice makers, packaging equipment, and sales. And we are looking forward to what classes we're going to be presenting this year. Those will be available on modernice.com or coming to you via an email, so look for them and sign up for them. Today, our clients are consistently inquiring where we stand as far as supply chain, what is happening to it, where is it going, what's being done about it, all those types of things. So Modern wanted to create a platform today to educate all of you. Joining me is Bill Schneider, the CEO of Vogt, Ben Albrechts, the president of Lear, Thurman Melson, the president of Invinia, which manages the Hamer brands, and Mike Ringstaff, our director of business development at Modern Ice. So we're excited to be here in an engaging conversation to go through what these challenges were for them, their perspectives, what they did with them, how the last 2 years have gone, and what the future holds from their perspective. So let's get started here. And again, welcome, gentlemen. Bill, Thurman, Ben, Mike, glad to have you here. Excited about it. So if we take a step back and we go back to February and March of 2020, and all of us got hit with a thing called COVID-19 and all the questions that happened in our minds. I guess turning to you, Thurman, how did your company look at it, deal with it? You had multiple facilities. Share with us some of your insights.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing that we had to think through was we looked out and we saw a lot of uncertainty in market demand. Really, right out of the gate, we saw our customers holding back on cash, trying to figure out what the world would look like. And so we had to think about, hey, how did we staff? How did we manage our organization coming into potentially a recessionary environment? The second thing that we had to think through was, how did we implement new protocols for safety? Real challenge that I don't think any of us had much comprehension of what COVID-19 meant and how did we keep ourselves safe. So we looked at CDC guidelines, we implemented them to the best of our ability and worked on how do we manage safely. The third thing that we had to take a look at was our supply base, and as we were deemed an essential company, but were our suppliers going to be able to keep us in stock of parts that we needed to produce? So very challenging, but we thought about it along those lines of what did the market environment look like, how do we work safely, and then how do we collaborate with our critical suppliers to keep our business functional.
Excellent. Yeah. Bill, Vogt obviously was thrown the same challenges. How did you step back, look at it, your team? How did you go about it?
Yeah, I think for the first time, and this may upset some of the folks in my organization, I put the most important person in our customer, or most important person in our business is our customer,
right.
And our most important asset is our people. And we went from being externally focused on customers to being internally focused on the safety of our employees. How are we going to keep them safe? And for the first time, I think that became an all-consuming environment for us at the very, very outset. We then took a look at the classes of work, I would say the tasks, and then the classes of work, the workforce classes, in order for us to keep meeting production needs. We require certain certifications to actually weld on a pressure vessel. As COVID went through our organization, some of these folks were absent. The backfill of those folks out in the marketplace doesn't exist. And it takes a period of time to get somebody certified and educated to do something like this. I would say one thing that just came to mind during the outset at COVID, we were faced with we were in the middle of two major steel strikes, LTV and Allegheny Steel. And so we're looking for product which is already in high demand, and the workers are now pushing that product our direction, and now all of a sudden we're on allocation. and how can we meet our customers' needs. So in addition to COVID, we had this sort of secondary influence on us.
Interesting. Then again, everything hit into February, beginning of March. Typically, we're building a lot of boxes, and really things really changed for Lear.
Yeah.
Tell me how you and your team focused on that, and what was the impact?
Yeah. The timing of things was not ideal. Typically January, February, we're building inventory, and you go from one day it's business as usual to the next day there's just tons of uncertainty. And right around mid-March, orders came to a pretty fast halt, and we were already at high inventory levels, and we kept our plant going, and our inventory numbers got to all-time highs in April, to the point where we had to start looking for external storage. Well, that proved to be costly, timely, and it was just a challenge with everything going on to find something real quick. So we had to go through a furlough. We furloughed our production staff for a week. We furloughed even our office staff for a week, just to keep some things consistent as we navigated through this new world of, can we work from home? We need production people in the plant. And in retrospect, we knowing now what we know, we would have never done that and figured out a place to put boxes, because right shortly after Memorial Day, we saw things pick up, and orders just started coming, at least for our product again. And that kind of started, I'd say, the process of more so the supply chain impact that we're seeing today. So that was the early onset.
Yeah, it was a difficult call, even to keep production going, because it was so uncertain in the marketplace what was going to happen.
Yeah. We were begging people to take some inventory from us, and we did have, people were good, and the industry kind of came together to get through this together, and that was real nice to see.
Absolutely. Mike, same thing. Our clients were impacted, and your team is interacting with them and talking to them, and yourself very active with our client base. What were they seeing? What were they hearing? What were they sharing with you?
Well, obviously, as our clients, as business owners as well, have similar challenges that we're all facing. But I would say that some of the biggest challenges that our clients had communicated to us was just the overall timing. Again, COVID hit in February of March 2020. Historically, clients are getting ready for the upcoming summer selling season. They're going 100 miles an hour with their hair on fire in preparation, and all of a sudden the brakes are put on, and you step back and you have to start reevaluating what's going on in your business, how you're going to manage this pandemic, some of those types of things. So to dovetail into what Ben was saying, just the overall uncertainty. Clients were concerned of the uncertainty of businesses that were going to be shut down or reduced hours. And I would say probably the biggest impact was the special events. As things started to shut down, a lot of our clients certainly have a big impact on special events and servicing those clients, and it's a huge revenue area for them. So a big impact. Along the lines of labor, as we all faced, the safety challenges. How do I keep my employees safe? And then as a packaged ice manufacturer, it's more of a seasonal business. You have that challenge of, is it going to be different because it is seasonal, and how am I going to get those employees and retain them? So similar challenges from the labor perspective on how I'm going to run my business. Right. And then you look back as far as the clients that have made a significant investment in their business prior to the start of the season, and what is that going to look like as far as return? Clients that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in preparation for the season, and what was that going to mean? And then on the other side, you have clients that we're needing to make investment in merchandisers, production, baggers, parts, those types of things. Do I wait? Or do I go ahead and pull the trigger and make the investment? It was really a challenging time, and I think about Modern Ice, what we did differently as far as our interaction with clients. I would say our frequency of contact with clients increased, and it was more out of just to say hello how are you doing? How can we help your business? What are you hearing in the marketplace? Again, we were all in this together, and how do we navigate through it as an industry? So those were some of the things that I was hearing from the clients in the industry.
Yeah, no, it's interesting as you all make different points, and you go back about just the elevated level of communication. Even internally, we did more of filming messages to keep our employees who had lots of questions and doubts during that time somewhat on a steady path, and almost to give some security there, to creating webinars for our clients with some experts who could come in and talk about different things as related to where they were. It was very, very interesting times. Bill, as we started to go down this path now, so we're leaving March, we're going into June, July, August, September of 2020 and 2021. We all found an interesting thing with supply chain. How did you sense a change at Vogt with supply chain, or see a change?
Yeah, so great question. And certainly at the crux of our business is our supply chain, much like yours. Our shift went from being internally focused, not back necessarily to our customers, but to our vendors and our suppliers. And we found ourselves, we tried to come up with all kinds of remedies to say, hey, we'll purchase in large quantities, we'll purchase in advance, we'll push cash out there in order to bring inventory in so that we can build machines. And I think that the supply base, they serve so many different industries and they serve so many different clients that they wanted to make sure that they could keep everybody in the game and not change or support one person or one company. While that was, I would say, hair-raising for us in order to meet our customers' demands, it certainly was probably the right thing to do as we together kind of come back out of this. I would say that communication certainly increased during that period of time with our vendors, and as soon as we started coming out of it, we were making more in-person sales, I would say, calls with vendors than we were with customers. Where are you in your supply chain? How can you get us what we need? How can we help you? Is there something in our order process that can change? How do you look at our business? Well, Bill, are you buying parts just to put on a shelf, or do you actually need them for production? And as an OEM, we do need both, but we need them to understand that of the production units, that's the stuff, as you mentioned, Ben, keep production going, right? Level load your shop. How do you keep that efficiency? That was key during that period of time coming out of it. And I'm not sure we're fully out of that part yet, Gary. I had a question for you, Mike, if I may.
Sure.
Absolutely.
The delay in the festivals and things like that certainly played a big role at the beginning of this. What do you see? I mean, I keep hearing Europe has lagged behind, or the international market has lagged behind the U.S. in reopening. And I'm not sure I really see any of that resurgence like we've seen in the U.S. to the degree that we've seen it.
Bill, you're exactly right. I think from an international perspective, it is totally different. It's been a much slower transition back into, if you want to call it that, normalcy. Getting back to normal. But as we know here in the U.S., the special events, those types of things have started to resurge again, pick up, those types of things. I think about, again, in conversation with clients, a lot of clients are very, very heavily in that business, the special events. And it was critical that part of their business came back. Where, again, you have other clients that have a mix of retail, then they have the special events and those types of things. But, that I would say, and specifically here in the U.S., that was the biggest impact, was the special events.
That's a good point, though, is you look at the international market, and so much of materials and supplies come from an international market. And an example at Lear is we don't purchase Chinese copper, but their downtime, because they haven't opened up and people are still home, causes strain on their production efforts. And just because we don't buy Chinese copper doesn't mean that other people who do don't see an impact, which essentially impacts the whole industry.
Sure.
So it's just because one thing is irrelevant to you doesn't mean it doesn't have an impact in another area. That can put that strain on your company.
Yeah, we definitely see that in the electronics field, and what's going on in cars and computer chips has an effect on the control products that we buy. We really are, even to the best of our managing it, you are influenced by these macroeconomic trends that are going on right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And as we look to stock for production, how much do we stock, and what levels do we need to stock for European business or international business? And that to me is still an unknown. I don't know if with you.
No, I think I would be in agreement, Bill. I think that's still an unknown. From a domestic standpoint, we've taken a much aggressive stance as far as what we inventory. Our inventory is probably up 50% from what it was pre-COVID, just to balance out some of those demand or supply chain issues that you all have to meet our demands for clients. So our algorithms of what our systems tell us to do, we sent those way far out to say order, thinking we're not going to get it for these amount of days, and get them in. Did you see some of the same things?
I do. I was going to say, if you think about your demand forecasting pre-COVID and even in the early days of COVID, you would think if I'm looking at an 8-week cycle, if I'm looking at a 12-week cycle, I'm giving my suppliers enough kind of signals in terms of what we need. That's completely different. I think you need to be looking out at a 6 to 9 month horizon in terms of how you're communicating with your suppliers about what your needs are, placing open blanket purchase orders to get that signal in. I think a lot of suppliers right now are reacting to first come, first serve, and so you've got to be prepared to navigate in that environment.
One last question for any or all of you on here is, and before we close down, and we'll go to after COVID started, but the other thing that we all had to deal with was work at home, not work at home. Some jobs aren't. Building a merchandiser isn't a work at home opportunity. How did that affect your businesses, personalities within your business, not being able to be together in a room and talk like we once did? What was that like at the beginning?
Yeah, I think what was interesting was, first, everybody just learning the protocols about how to be on a Zoom meeting. Or mute your phone, please. But, the two things that stood out from my perspective is, one, what it did reveal is where we were people dependent versus process dependent. When we really were reliant on hallway conversations for work to get done, that was one of the things that you started to realize, hey, here's something to think about that we need to adapt to. The second thing is really just that over communication. I think we talked earlier about over communication, but the need to keep a constant rhythm going with your team just to make sure the points are getting across. But it's also, I think, important for people who are probably feeling isolated at home to have that sense of connection with their coworkers, so long-term colleagues and friends, just to keep morale up as we work through the pandemic.
Excellent.
Yeah, we did work from home, particularly for office staff, and myself, I've worked from home up until recently for almost 11 years, and I think everyone thinks that it's this great thing, and it is. It can be done successfully, and I think a lot of companies found that. But you miss that personal connection and that ability to. I have a quick question, and you hear someone talking about something. I want to follow up on that. You lose a lot of that. Zoom and Skype and all. There's 4 or 5 different ones we use. It's great, but that personal connection is what's important. And I think as we open up, and I think for me it was September until I first started traveling. Man, that first trip back was just refreshing to interact with people, and I think it's pushed us to continue to realize how important it is to get out and see our customers in person, especially now.
I was going to say, Mike.
Yeah, to your point, Ben, I mean, obviously our business is a relationship, and we have a lot of great, wonderful clients out there. So getting out and spending time with those people and understanding where their pinch points are, and just spending time with our clients is a big part of what we do. I would tell you that our team was kind of going through withdrawal, so to speak. You know what I mean? We were all locked down in an office and those types of things. But as we transitioned out, it became a different level of respect as well when reaching out to clients, making sure that we had masks on, and we were following their protocol to their business and those types of things, and then making sure that clients knew that we were coming. It's kind of funny, you'd make those calls to set appointments. Is it okay if we come by and say hello?
Right.
We're managing through this situation. And I would say 99.9% of our clients said, "Come by, we'd love to see somebody. We'd love to see somebody." So
sure.
it's just amazing. Again, the business is so relationship driven that you spending time with clients, you didn't realize how much you missed that part of the business when you get locked down.
We might not be able to build one model, but we can build the other, and so the schedule is ever changing, almost by the day.
And Ben, as you look at some of those long lead times, like you said, copper, which is a raw material, 35 weeks out, I mean, is there pricing consistency for what you're entering a purchase order today at for 35 weeks out? Or is it, I know we've had some suppliers who say you can enter the purchase order today, and at time of build or manufacturing, we'll tell you what the pricing is. How are you seeing that, or what are you seeing in the marketplace?
Depending on what material you're purchasing, that you could have a set price, or sometimes it's geared to an index. So steel is based on the price of steel at the time of purchase, but we don't see that impact until 6 to 9 months when we're buying. An order today is a buy for 6 to 9 months from now. Mm-hmm. So the price could go up, it could go down. So what the margin on a product today could be very different in 3 months, and it can fluctuate both ways a bit. But I mean, for us, I'd say from a cost perspective, I don't think we'll see those drastic swings we saw in call it early 2021 when everyone went skyrocketed up, pretty much everything. But I don't think we're done with that. I think we'll see it being a little more consistent as things kind of settle down a bit over the next few months to years.
Yeah, Thurman, what are you seeing? What's still impacting your business?
Yeah, I really think that the supply chain shortages, the inflationary pressures, whether they're directly related to COVID or they're a second order kind of coming out of the pandemic and the surge of demand, don't know their exact cause, but they're definitely present. I think they're going to be here for a while. Just if you look at how different countries, China manages COVID and the fact that it still is present, I think those kind of turbulences are going to stay with us for a while. So we think very consciously about price. I think it's one of the things that you have to be very cautious about. I think that companies can have a bad reputation for taking advantage of price when it might not reflect what their cost basis is. But it really does it's incumbent on us to be very thoughtful in looking at where are we seeing the inflationary pressures, how do we manage that responsibly with our customers. Labor is another area that we're seeing extraordinary inflation over the last 9 months as the workforce is so tight. It's good from a business perspective in terms of it puts value on the automation products that we provide, but on the other hand, how do we manage our business and the need for labor? We've got to be conscious and thoughtful about how do we manage price.
Interesting. And Bill, as you guys went through and have managed some of these things, what's changed because of COVID in your business that you may not change back? I mean, what are there things that you learned in these processes because you had to either think differently, be differently, that has made you different that you wouldn't change because of the impact of COVID that you may not have thought of prior to?
Yeah, I think we had a really solid supply base prior to COVID. We knew when we built a certain model, we knew where the valves were coming, we knew where the piping was coming. So we had a solid supply base. And COVID has, when it impacted our supply base, has forced us to look for alternate suppliers and suppliers who can actually do more for us. So is there a subassembly or a kitting process that you can do and deliver me something more holistic that then I can assemble into the equipment? Yes. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think that if we see productivity being able to increase during this time of when supply isn't necessarily coming back to catch up, we'll probably keep those kinds of practices going. I will echo both of these gentlemen's comments around margin erosion. We've had a lot of volatility in prices, and we have supply bases that don't necessarily commit and deliver to that committed price when it's out for a long period of time. So that has caused us to think, how do we then present opportunities to our customers? And I agree with Thurman's point. Are there suppliers who are trying to take advantage of just this particular market condition? And so we elect to, whenever we have we're faced with this kind of pressure, tie things to an indice that then our customers can also see, and as it fluctuates, our customers can understand where we are. So we don't want to play that or be that company that says, hey, we're taking advantage of this process. We have long-standing, thank you for your business too, Gary, Mike. We have long-standing commitments to our customers and relationships, which we appreciate, and certainly don't want to put ourselves in that position. So we're going to be asking more from our suppliers, I guess.
Yeah. To build on one of Bill's themes, and I think the broader theme is flexibility. If you think about the uncertainties that we had to figure out how to navigate, and you brought up a couple of, hey, you've got welders who have certain certifications that are required, but it is, how do you think about building in flexibility in your business? And it's cross-training on the floor. We don't necessarily have the same, need for the certifications that you do in your products, but how do we start thinking about cross-training assembly? How do we think about how does engineering work with the manufacturing floor? Because you're always going to see these disruptions. How do we think about, how do we design in alternative suppliers? How do we look at alternative suppliers for giving more value add? But that theme of flexibility is one of the things that you probably wouldn't have thought consciously of, but as you really look back at what was it that got you through the downtime, it was having that flexibility. And so that's probably something we'll just keep building on and more thoughtfully thinking about how do we build it into our organization.
Agreed.
Yeah, another different type of question, Bill, you start with it is, we talked about, it's talked about all over, the great retirement. People leaving the marketplace, choosing not to come back to the marketplace. Over the last 2 years, have you seen an impact at Lear with this? And if you have, what are you all doing differently to address that?
Yeah, we have. We're, a lot of you know Lear is an employee-owned company, so we have, stock program for our employees, which is kind of a blessing and a curse sometimes. It allows people to grow their retirement portfolio and sometimes, retire earlier than they would otherwise. But for us, that combined with some of the, external factors in our world has made some people decide, okay, maybe now's the time to hang it up. And we, being in central Wisconsin, struggle to get people. I mean, I know everyone is, but it is very competitive where we're at. So we've had to not only invest internally in areas to recruit, but also retain. We're focused very much on retaining our current employees, providing a good workplace for them because they have options. They can go down the street and, they'll take those options for maybe $1 more. And you go down the street and everywhere's got a sign-on bonus. Everyone's, we're offering this and that. So it's the culture and it's taking care of the people that separates you so that word spreads. So investing in our people to retain as much as we can. Having clear succession plans in place, talking to our people, knowing kind of what their thoughts are, so we can plan 6 months to a year to find someone to replace them. But I'd say that's one of our huge focuses at Lear right now is just the whole people aspect of running.
Bill and Thurman, you seen the same?
Yeah, I like the comment. It's the career planning, it's the developing the culture. That's what really will help people stay engaged and stay with the organization, is that they feel that there is the long-term career path and that the company's invested in them. I think that's a very critical component.
Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely vital to retaining your employees. Otherwise, they'll be poached.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mike, during this time, these last 2 years, what have customers been saying or feeling during this, and the good, and what are the challenges that they see during these last couple of years?
I think we've seen a transition, Gary, over the last couple of years. I think clients are evaluating their businesses differently. I mean, as we all sit here today, you think about the importance of just the ability to get wire or a part that may impact your business, and think about that. If you have a part that runs a piece of equipment that you don't have, that shut you down for weeks at a time. So point being is that clients have taken a different look at spare part kits, having stuff in inventory, those types of things that allows them to react at a different level. Our freeze force team, we're doing more preventative maintenance and some of those types of things because it's critical that equipment is being serviced during the off season to make sure that you're optimal during the season. To Thurman's point, I mean, we're seeing a lot more automation. Clients are understanding the impact of labor and what that means to their business. And you know, it's amazing when you talk to clients and they make the decision to go automated. They say, "Boy, I should have done that years ago." I mean, it's such an impact to their business. So we're seeing companies run their businesses differently. The challenges are, as we all sit here today, we know the challenges are still the same. Cost, you know, the ability to get supplies in a timely fashion. Obviously, we talk to our clients about labor, distribution. I mean, the cost of fuel, those types of challenges. So it's really an interesting time, certainly. But I think our clients have done well to make the transition, and you know, our level of communication to the client certainly has increased to make them aware of costs and lead times so they can manage the business. But again, I think they're doing things internally that has helped them manage their business at a different level as well.
Yeah. We started to talk about some of the supply chain, and you were talking about different vendor relationships that came out of this. Thurman and Ben, did you see similar things where you may have had an aligned supply chain that couldn't deliver for whatever reason that you've had to outsource and develop different supply chain relationships?
Yeah, we actively have taken a look at an opportunity of how do we think about different partners, and as the Invinia story goes, that we've consolidated multiple operating companies together. That's given us an opportunity to really look at which of the partners are the right partners to work with, and that's on the electronic side, which I think has given us a longer reach than we might have had as individual operating companies. And then it's also taken a look at some of the people who have the ability to scale and drive the capacity as we're seeing growth, that they have the opportunity to scale with us. So we've definitely been looking at that supply chain.
We essentially have evaluated pretty much everything that goes into making a merchandiser, and you know, quite a few we had backup suppliers, and quite a few we didn't. We didn't have secondary suppliers, so we've had to look at onboarding, you know, new suppliers that in the event that our primary supplier can't come through, we have an alternative, just to keep things going, you know, in our production plant. You know, we've seen a lot of uncertainty in you know, the ports and transportation and logistics that, you know, stuff we think is coming in, and sometimes it just doesn't show up. And so communication has been important with our vendors to, you know, make sure that we know what to expect, and if we need to change things up, we can do that. But you know, the whole idea of working with our vendors and having regular check-ins and knowing what to expect has been probably the most important thing, because we know there's going to be challenges. They're going to come up, and we just need to be able to react when they do to keep things moving.
You know, I think you make a good point. I think how we interact with all three of your businesses over the last 2 years has been at much different levels.
Right.
From a communication standpoint to opening up into our systems to see what we've got coming in to where you guys can be at. I know a few of us have weekly team meetings on production needs, forecast, what can we do, those types of things. And in addition to that, I think as you guys have talked about with employees and things along those lines, you know, we too have had to look at what we're doing as far as that employee base, retention, education, career pathing. We've talked a lot about that. We have a new human resource person, and we say we got to show persons a path with which to grow in this business, which is similar to what, you know, Mike does with his team also with our clients. What's their path forward?
Absolutely.
Is that fair, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we do a lot of that too. So I think it has taught us all different lines of communication, and I think you said it earlier, how you have to come together as a community, whether it's this supply chain or our mutual going to our mutual clients at the end. It's a lot more communication has evolved with where we are over the last 2 years. I mean, a lot of that's positive. I don't know that I would change some of that.
I think that sticks.
Yeah.
Because that has become an expectation now, which is, and a very good one.
Yeah.
A very good one. Yeah, and I think the other thing that we've learned over these last 2 years is there's just volatility, but you're not, where I think early on in this you saw the volatility and you knew this was going to be a problem. I don't know if you guys see this, but I think now you're not sure where the volatility comes. You just every Monday expect some volatility,
Absolutely.
but you're just not sure who wins that volatility award that week. Is that how you guys see it?
I think it's very fair.
Yeah, no, I find that interesting with these times.
Yeah, I think it's important to also know where your product is coming from, as we're so reliant on, and we've talked about international already this morning. The war in Ukraine. There's things that I found out that I frankly had no idea came out of that part of the world, and how they impact maybe a totally different industry, but how as you go down the supply chain line, it will have an impact on something we do. So, understanding your vendors more is important too. It's not to us. It's not just the communication, but really knowing more about their business, which I don't think we always tried to do before.
Right, very, very much so.
And I think, Bill, to your point, as far as the labor, as far as we all know, the time investment to find that right individual, right? And once you get that individual, the culture and retaining that individual becomes critical, because we know, again, the cost and the time investment that's involved in finding the right person and then keeping them on board is a big part of what we're doing.
Yeah, for us to take in a welder and educate them through our process is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $15,000 to $20,000. And if we keep a revolving door, all we're doing is training people for the outside. And you mentioned it earlier, Ben, about somebody will jump for $1 more. Well, that $1 more may be pulling one of my Code 17 welders that I have to then spend 6 months to train to get the next person up to that level. One of the things I just want to mention along your lines, Gary, with suppliers is in the past we would give maybe a delivery date, which included, hey, we know what we have in stock and we know what we can get in time from our supplier because they've been pretty consistent. And we go out and we tell Mike Ringstaff, hey, Mike, we'll have that for you in 12 or 18 weeks. Right. And based on history, pretty close. Not always there, but pretty close. We would get the supplier material in time to meet that, but we've already started the production of the equipment. They don't want to be unreliable. They want to be reliable, the suppliers, but it's how much we have to look at their dependability in order for us to communicate back to our customer. And so we're a little, I don't know if the word is skittish when we respond, because we don't know what that Monday morning issue is going to be.
Right.
And it's about not disappointing our customers, but at the same time, now we're out, okay, if our vendor can't get us something for 26 weeks, that's what we have to truly understand and hope that they can start delivering that 26-week cycle and then can deliver and then shorten it back up again.
Yeah.
Right. And Bill, to your point, I think, and you bring up a great point. I think the world that we live in today is people are anticipating that there could be some delays. And it's never that fun call where you have to call a client and say, unfortunately, we've been delayed by supply or whatever the scenario is. But I think the client, not that they're always 100% understanding they got a business to run, but I think they're understanding that we're communicating and we're doing it on the front end, meaning that, hey, you're supposed to deliver on the 12th and we're calling on the 12th and saying, it's not going to be there.
Right.
We're managing that to the best of our ability to be open with communication to the client so they can run their business.
Yeah, and we appreciate the efforts. You guys touch the end customer, and that's obviously the where our business fits. So thank you for that. Pushing that.
No, appreciate that. And again, we talk about the new norm. I mean, I guess is that how you see this? We are just in this new norm. It's going forward.
I think so. I think that for all the reasons that we talked about, the global macro trends. The pandemic really isn't over globally. Just the surge in demand, interest rates. I think until all of these things work their way out of the system, we're going to see that volatility that you referenced. Yeah. And then I think the things that we learned and that we started using during COVID of communication, flexibility, being process-driven or improving processes, those are the things that we're going to keep focusing on to manage through that uncertainty.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, as we have looked at February, March, we've kind of gone over the last 2 years, I really think the clients enjoy hearing that, but what they really want to know is, where are we going? You know, what's your vision? You guys are leaders within our industry on the manufacturing side. We're proud to partner with you. So let's go around the room and share with us, you know, where you see, I mean, what do you see as far as improving outputs, Ben, as it relates to Lear in the future?
Yeah, I think we're going to be challenged, certainly for the remainder of the year and probably well into next year, as there's just so many unknowns. I mean, Thurman talked about inflation and things kind of just, I'd say, settling down a bit. I think that we will internally focus a lot, as we've talked about, on our people. You may also, Thurman mentioned, cross training. We're doing something similar and making sure that we can pivot as much as possible. When you've got someone who needs to work in foam is out because COVID is still around, and people are out for a week at a time, you need to make sure someone can fill that gap. So making sure that we have multiple skills and providing value to our people has been important, and that's where we're going to when you talk output. I think once the supply chain starts to settle down as well, we'll be able to increase numbers with new people and kind of cut down on some of the longer lead times that we have. It'll also be interesting to see, over the next few months, just how the industry goes. If that continues to be strong, or does it slow down and settle in a bit, and that would allow us to improve things from a lead time perspective. But I'm excited. I think there's nowhere to go but up, and we continue to have strong orders. The business is as healthy as it can be right now, and I'm just proud of what we've done to keep things going. And sometimes even today we tend to talk about all the challenges we've had, but we've had kind of record output this year. We've pivoted to increase our merchandise numbers more than we've ever done before, and that's with all the challenges. So I think as we get out of this, we can increase it even further to continue to support the industry.
I do agree with that, Ben. And I think you have to celebrate some of those wins, if it's even internally, that you are producing at a higher rate than you ever have.
Yeah.
Order entry has been strong, and challenges have certainly been there for all of you and us. But there are some celebrations that we're producing at a high level.
Right.
So that's a good thing. Thurman, what about you guys?
Yeah, I agree with a couple of points Ben made. One, being proud of what we've accomplished. And I think as we look at the tools and the processes that we've used and as we've gone through the volatility, I think we'll get better at using them. So I do see outputs increasing for the balance of the year. It will be still in an uncertain economic environment, but I think we're getting better at dealing with it and how do we navigate it. I think you'll start seeing both our company as well as other companies making conscious investments in productivity that are going to be helpful. A lot of the tools that are out there, the Lean Six Sigma manufacturing, it's time to turn those loose and see what we can drive in terms of cycle time reduction. So I'm optimistic in terms of where do we go from here.
Bill, what would you have to say?
First, I think this has been an excellent time for us to look at our processes. We brought in University of Louisville into our facility, their PhDs program. They actually have models that they can build for manufacturing. So cell manufacturing for us is very big. And also, how do we have our warehouse structured in order to feed our product line, right, at the different cells? So we know to remain competitive, all the cost pressures on the outside require us to even be more focused on the efficiencies we can drive internally. So we've made some investments to do that, put those processes in place, first understand them, and get an outside view of, hey, what can change. Sometimes when you grow up in an environment, you stay in that same environment. So having some other folks look at us. I think also communication has to stay ramped. And the reason we have to get it a little further downstream, and it puts an onus almost on the end user. What manufacturer, ice manufacturer, how far out can they see? The further they can see and communicate back internally to our supply chain, the better view we will have and can react with our supply base. And I would say it's a daunting task.
Can be,
asking them to give me that 26 weeks view,
Right.
because my suppliers are 26 weeks, right? And there's a big disconnect there. So I think together we're going to have to work through that.
Oh,
No, I was just going to say, I think we started NAR by doing some pre-ordering and things along those lines.
Sure.
Mike, he makes a great comment that
He does.
Our clients have been historically trained somewhere between 8 and 14 weeks.
Right.
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 Tell me what their vision is today, or what are you seeing, or how are we educating out there in the marketplace?
I think I do see a transition. I see a different level of education to the clients. I think buying patterns are starting to change, Bill, to be honest. And I think people, to your point, Gary, I think, everybody is so busy during the summer period. Historically, you wait until the fall and winter to place an order, which, as we all know today, is not a reality anymore. Right. So I think clients are really starting to step back and understand the impact to their business, whether it be production or automation or whatever, during their peak times. What a better time to evaluate what's going on in my business when I'm actually running it. So I do see a transition there. I see it from a modern ice perspective. I see a transition of partnership with you guys from a standpoint of inventory, us building inventory levels, whether it be ice makers or baggers or merchandisers, certainly, and having that forethought out there as well that we can support our client base. So, Gary, I really see a transition where we're starting to see different buying patterns, I guess, if that's the best way to describe it, and just the ability to continue to support and supply clients.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
One, the ice season and running full out is right now for these customers, right? That for us as a manufacturer is almost our trough. We have to have ice makers ready for you in the fall and first quarter, or else they're not in the ice season. So our ordering pattern and buying pattern for you folks is different than what your customer is looking at.
100%.
Right. So we have to just make sure that we have that in line and communication around that there are different seasons, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Ben, I think I interrupted you.
no worries. I was thinking through some of the thoughts that were just shared, and for us, we feel reasonably well about our supply chain, but we're also somewhat guessing on what things are going to look like 6 months from now. I mean, we've seen a shift in our industry of larger merchandisers, with fuel costs going up, people want to deliver less, they want to make sure
100%.
ice is in stock. So that's what we're planning for. If something were to change, we could be vulnerable. So I think the communication we talked about of our teams, Modern and Lear, and with your other vendors here working together is important. So we know what the trends are coming and what the customers need. Because if we don't have the orders, having the orders in advance gives us clarity, but not having them, you go off of historical data that might not be right these days because it's been such a challenging couple of years. So it's interesting nonetheless.
And Ben, to your point, again, ordering, I think back to the lead times that all of us used to enjoy, right? That's not the world we live in today. And it takes more foresight to actually look ahead and say, hey, this is what I need, and this is when I need it,
Right.
and manage your business that way.
Thurman, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would agree with what the the changing of the buying patterns has been the most fascinating, because we do see surge buying going on, and it creates that whipsaw effect in our business that we've got to think about how do we react to. And if I look out over the next 3-year horizon, you know that there's going to be that cyclicality that's going to occur that on the buying patterns, both in quantity and timing, that is going to impact how do we do our labor planning, how do we do our supplier planning. So it's really going to push back on improving the processes and staying agile. But it is a new volatility that we need to adapt to.
What are your guys' concerns as it relates to just the raw materials? Not so much just the supply chain, but the raw materials. You've talked about copper, we've talked about steel, you've talked about electronics. What's your vision 6 to 18 months out on these types of things, or the effects they're going to continue to have?
I mean, it's anyone's guess, right? But we're keeping a constant eye on everything. We're studying statistics, learning what's going on in the industry, in the markets, in other markets. I mentioned that earlier. What impacts, one market could have an effect on us. I think most of our domestic purchases, we feel pretty good. It's the international stuff that's just the unknown, because you have so many various factors that go into play. But for us, it's keeping an eye on foam. We feel confident right now, and anything that has electronics is a bit of an unknown, and certainly anything coming from offshore. And it may not be us purchasing something, but an element of one of our vendors comes from offshore too. So we're having those conversations of, what are you buying from offshore, and where is that coming from? And there's certainly certain areas of the world that we're trying to avoid, putting our eggs in that basket, for lack of a better term.
And I think the industry should know too, I think you make a good point, that you guys are digging deeper into each of your suppliers and where their supply's coming, that there should be some comfort of our clients of what we're all trying to do. We're interacting at a higher level with all of you on a weekly basis, as you guys are interacting with suppliers and challenging where they are. So we are doing due diligence to make sure we're trying to figure this out and be more proactive as we move forward. Is that fair?
You're spot on. I think Ben hit something that's near and dear to my heart earlier when you mentioned that, we have the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Nickel is a very large component into making stainless steel, and a big piece of that, or a majority of it, comes from Ukraine. And so this has really, that's where, when you see about, I think that raw material availability is still up in the air.
Yeah, it's a great question. From a macroeconomic sense, you have to believe that the industry expands to demand. And so you have to think over time that it all comes back into equilibrium. But having any foresight in terms of when does that occur is really hard to project out. So I'm confident in our careers. We'll be back in a more stable supply base.
Sure.
But when in that career cycle, it's too hard to predict right now.
Yeah. So all of you still see volatility.
Yes.
6 to 12 months out for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
That's interesting. And you talked about labor requirements earlier, and again, what are you all proactively doing to assure you're doing a better job of getting labor in and addressing those issues? We all know it's a challenge, so we have to overcome that challenge. What do you all see moving forward?
Yeah, we've turned on an active recruiting process that goes right to these trade schools, right from my level down, going in to talk about who we are, what we do, where our product fits globally, and educate them so that they can see at an interview what kind of career path that there is available at Vogt. And during our last negotiation with our union force, we put in actual task grade levels so that people could elevate themselves based on their certifications to actually make more money. And so
Have an incentive to do so.
Exactly. And so we're seeing our folks, hey, I want to take the test to certify at that level because it does mean something extra for me. And then you get to work not only on this piece of equipment, but also this piece of equipment. And so, we're trying to build an educational process and career path.
And does that go back to, like you were talking about early on in the COVID process and the Class 17 welder was gone? by doing this, you believe you're going to create greater versatility within your business also?
Right. We can't hire a grade 17 in because it's a vote certification that we have. It's not an industry certification. So, but if we can get somebody in that can, rapidly go through the certification process internally, now we can backfill quicker. And so people are saying, hey, I want to be that grade level. What test do I have to take? So there's some energy around that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. If I were you, Rich.
Yeah, I really agree with the alignment with the trade schools, bringing people in on an internship level. We've used that with success in the past, and that really has built a sense of loyalty of people coming in earlier in their career, seeing a career path and building up on that. The other thing that I think right now is we're just keeping a very consistent doors open hiring policy, that when we see good talent, we're going to bring them in irrespective of precise need, because we know that over time, bringing in that stable base is going to benefit us. And then we really work to encourage our employees with employee referrals. They're our strongest advocate in terms of working for us, as well as helping us sort out who is a likely good employee. You don't want to bring in an underperformer and have that as part of your reputation. So we work on leveraging our employee base as being the key referral to bring in labor.
Yeah, great points and some things we do at Lear as well. And I think that's the only thing I'd add is really focus on investing in our community. We, in May, had 3 different high schools come in for tours. Some of those individuals joined as summer help, and some of them are graduated, and we hope that they can see a career path with us. We've also been loaning out some merchandisers and some transport units to local events, and that spreads our message to the community. We've branded them with "We're Hiring," and so someone's at an event having a beer and they see this cool merchandiser or transport unit. It's like, well, let me learn about that company, and maybe that's a way to bring people in. So no idea is a bad idea when it comes to trying to recruit and find people these days.
Mike, from your perspective and the team out there, boots on the ground right now, interacting with clients, and what do you think they're seeing as the future? Do you have a feel for that yet?
I think we do. Again, I think everybody understands the challenges that everybody's facing as far as labor. I will say our clients have been proactive in a similar arena. Again, with the business being in the summertime, you have kids that are going to school during the summer, college students, those types of things that you can tap into that market. Kids that are looking for income and those types of things. So I think a lot of our clients have tapped into that market because it's seasonal. Again, at the end of the season, they go back to college, and you get the opportunity, Thurman, to your point, if you get a superstar, then what does that person become to your business long term?
Absolutely.
Some of those types of things. And then from the automation side, I think our clients are looking harder at that than ever. Again, just the ability to add the automation piece and to minimize some of those labor challenges would probably be the 2 areas I would comment on.
What a great afternoon with some fantastic industry leaders to bring information on where supply chain has been, where it is today, and where it's going. We at Modern Ice have been engaged over the last 24 months at some of the highest levels, from interaction with vendors on location at their locations to assure our clients are getting supply and understanding what's happening in the marketplace. I certainly would be remiss without thanking Bill Schneider from Vote, Thurman Melson from Hamer, and Ben Albrechts from Lear for joining us today, in addition to Mike Ringstaff, our Director of Business Development, in support of putting this afternoon session on to educate the most valued asset we have here at Modern Ice, our clients. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to doing this again in the future. Be well. Have a great season.